the time. All right, yeah. Apologies came from Member Brownberg and Member Warmington. House Leader Member Green is on his way. He had indicated that he would be running a little late. Now, members, as you will see, we have emailed a soft copy of the matrix. We have not tabled any of the documents, though persons have started to ask, because the business of the Parliament is indeed first its own internal process. And I do not feel it is yet time for everyone to weigh in on the process that we are going through. The Senate did this over an extended period quite quietly and comfortably, and I hope that we can benefit from a similar process. Have we all had a chance to take a look at the matrix? The idea of providing the matrix was so that at a glance, almost we would be able to see how the standing orders were reformatted more so. It is very difficult to give a page-by-page, blow-by-blow idea as to the shifts, but this matrix takes into consideration all the adjustments. Everybody has a copy there? Or would you, let me circulate hard copies as well, just in case, okay? So go ahead. You have them ready? Donna? Thanks. Is everyone, you're looking at a copy? Member Paula, you have a copy? Okay. Member Williams, you have a copy there? Canon? All right, so once it has been circulated and everyone has a copy, let me ask for someone to move to confirm the minutes of February 3rd, 2026. So moved by Member Paulwell, seconded by Member Williams. So though this document, it would appear based on persons reading through that you may need a little bit more time with this matrix, it was done to facilitate the members of the committee having a more comfortable and comprehensive way of looking at the new standing orders without feeling as if you're starting over. The standing orders have not changed significantly, but the way they're organized has changed. That's really what it is. And this matrix helps with being able to appreciate the reorganization. So let's take, for instance, number one, what is the structure? The existing standing orders had a linear numbering where if we needed to insert something, we had to tack it on, as we did in 73, A, B, C, D, E, when we needed to introduce those additional amendments. I think it was the same when we did the Women's Caucus. It was the same. We had to sort of tack it in there. This new revised format organized the standing order into parts, and it's integrated into a single framework. So it's a complete restructuring in terms of its structure, and it is to improve its usability. It removes that fragmentation, and it reflects a new codification in terms of this exercise. We are going to have the benefit of, what's Sean's last name? Kinsey. Mr. Sean Kinsey, who, as said in the previous meeting, did substantial work. He is from the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and would be a resource person for the committee as well as we go through the deliberations. I can't remember if Mr. Buchanan was at the last meeting. Were you there? Yeah? Yes, he was. Okay. So everybody would have gotten draft copies the last time. We didn't stamp draft on them, so we remind members that it should stay within the committee initially for review. And this is really, this document complements that draft so that it helps with your review and revision and comparison. Member Paulwell.
Chairman, thanks very much. I just wanted to clarify. You said Mr. Kinsey is the person at the CPA, and he might be available to be with us, because I think that would be very useful.
Not might.
Okay. Yes.
He will be available.
Right.
We have so a part of some of the resource that the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association affords us, in addition to training, was as a result of our payments and participation as a member state in the association. We have certain benefits that we may call upon. And one of the benefits we called upon was their expert in the revision of standing orders and the review of standing orders. So that would have been Mr. Sean Kinsey. Yeah. He is going to come in once we need him. It would more likely than not be via Zoom. He has come in before. If you remember when we did our orientation and the training session, he was here physically, so we would have all met him. And he would be now available to, if provide any clarification we need, if we have anything that we think we would want to add, that we would want to take away, give us some indication as to what is happening across all Commonwealth jurisdictions. But I know it's an extensive exercise, and really we have just been trying to figure out what's the best way to do this. I don't know that when we take the extra time to review, that all of us have the time to really sit down and review the new standing orders. So I'm not sure how many of us have had a chance to read it thoroughly, and if not, how do we want to attack it?
And just to be clear, Madam Chair, these sets of proposed standing orders, they are derived from the wide experience of the Commonwealth. And is this, for example, a draft that other jurisdictions would have received, or this was done specifically for Jamaica?
So this was done specifically for Jamaica with consideration of our own standing orders. Our standing orders, and in fact many in the jurisdiction right across the particularly Caribbean and a lot of the Commonwealth, actually have the same. Trinidad and Tobago took from our standing orders significant aspects of what we did. So when we introduced our PAAC, our PAC, literally, if you take their standing order and look, it's quoted verbatim from ours. And you will find sometimes something comes up and an amendment is recommended by members. They will look across jurisdiction and see if it already exists. And if they're happy with it, then it is accepted. But this is not a document that has been provided as a general document to all jurisdictions desiring to improve their standing orders. It is tailor-made for us in Jamaica based on our existing standing orders. I had cited an example recently. I remember we were having a committee meeting, Member Paulwell, where someone called and said to me, Speaker, we have somebody who wants to come in the committee, and they're not allowed to come in the committee because we don't allow, outside persons to come in and ask questions. And I said to them, though our standing orders don't specifically speak to that, in, I think, 2019 or thereabout, the UK adjusted their standing orders to allow a member of parliament not recorded as a member of the committee to still come to the committee if they would like to come and ask questions, that they could be allowed in, but they wouldn't be allowed to vote. And I thought that that allowed the opposition member even more leeway in being able to participate. And so that was my indication to them, allow the member to come, because in the interest of democracy, you want to allow opposition members the opportunity to contribute as much as is possible, even if they weren't named to the committee per se.
So, Madam Speaker, Chairman, I think what we can do for future meetings is to have him available, because I think he would provide for us an ongoing context. And as an expert in this area, I think it would be useful for him to be present. So I don't know if it's going to be a burden on our Parliament, but if it can be done online, then it shouldn't be too difficult.
Yes, I'll go over to legal counsel. I will preface my thing to say, yes, he's available. Yes, we can have him. Yes, it's the intention to do so. However, Member Paulwell, I felt very uncomfortable, though it happens across all parliaments that persons are not always necessarily prepared. I don't want us to look unprepared. So when we invite the representative in from CPA, I want us to still appear a little bit more prepared, and that we have started to go through and that we have figured out the way structurally that we would like to review, so that he doesn't think that, we're just leaving it to his hands. Council, Ms. Stewart, and then Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for the provision of further clarity and for the avoidance of any form of doubt, and in response to Member Paulwell's question, a detailed comparative analysis was done in regards to looking at the standing orders for the various jurisdictions within the Commonwealth. For example, the Cayman Islands, Antigua and Barbuda, in about 2019-2020 had done a complete review of their standing order. So we had gone ahead, assessed those standing orders for Antigua and Barbuda, as well as the Cayman Islands, as well as Trinidad, Barbados, and the UK. So a complete analysis was done in order to provide the documentation by Mr. Kingsley.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. So in response to Member Paulwell's question about Mr. Kingsley's availability, he has given his commitment to join us whenever we require him to be here. And for the next meeting, he will be a part of that meeting to give an overall assessment as to what his findings were, and basically to go over the comparative table to show us what are the main differences between our current standing orders and the revised edition, and then going forward as and when required. And we would propose, I think there may be certain standing orders, but that will depend on members to decide if we want to revise any pressing standing orders currently for us to adopt before we are able to complete the review in its entirety.
Member Mallow, for a quick question. Do you have a hard copy of the draft?
I do, Madam.
Right, that's what
Chairman.
I recall.
Permit me, since you have called upon me, if you don't mind
Yes,
an
go
intervention.
ahead.
I was just taking time to read through the minutes. I'm not sure if we are on matters arising or matters for discussion, but it may be helpful to look at some of the matters arising. And also, I want to put on record my commendation for the approach being taken to having a draft of the revised standing orders made available. Very often, we embark on a process of law revision, expecting that we can go through it expeditiously, efficiently from scratch, and it doesn't happen in an efficient way. My own view from my experience in the offices that I've held, that coming to a committee with a draft for consideration is truly a best practice. And I want to commend your leadership and those who have assisted. I do recall speaking with Mr. Kingsley during the workshop, and he shed some light on the approach taken, and he had pointed out that while significant progress had been made on revising many of the orders, there were others that were left unrevised, and even the draft of the proposed revised orders remain incomplete. But my perusal of the draft document tells me that it's a really good working draft. I would only want to commend for the committee's deliberation some of the issues that have arisen in the Parliament with which we are now familiar and which have posed some complexity, whether by way of a refusal to accept the framework for resolving issues or otherwise for deliberation. And I see on page 3, Madam Chair, that having clarified the intended approach or what was not the intended approach, you did indicate that the matter would require sustained consideration of the issues and potentially across meetings. So I note the issue of methodology. I note Member Paulwell indicating that the opposition would be doing its own internal review of the draft before returning with a consolidated position. And also, the question had arisen as to whether there was a need for legislative backing for some of the things that need to be done. I could offer a view on that from having served as Attorney General and the Minister, should the committee wish to hear that view.
The clerk had an intervention.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to reiterate that the document that has been circulated to members is the completed draft. So amendments will be made based on the discussions that are held. Yes, that's the completed document. So whatever discussions that are held here, and if members take a different view and majority agrees, that's how additional amendments will be made. but this is a completed draft for review and consideration. Thank you.
So, member Malahoo for it. Just for clarity's sake, I'm just not remembering at what stage you joined the meeting the last time. I do believe the copy I gave you is my copy. I think that's what ended up happening because I'd circulated earlier. Right. So what happened was, along with the clerk, legislative council.
No one gets the wrong impression. I think I commandeered your copy.
That was fine. Yes. Yes, that was quite fine. So to have the process go fairly smoothly along, the idea was to use our existing standing orders initially as much as was possible and is possible, with the understanding that the clerk, legal counsel, and those within the Parliament's secretariat, administrative secretariat, had a very good appreciation of the standing orders over the many years, and also had the resource of other clerks in the jurisdiction if they needed to bounce something off. And they did almost like a workshop, a detailed, concentrated process of working on the standing orders, hours and hours and weeks long, so that it would reduce now the amount of time required by us in going over a document that would have been drafted and placed before us as a proposed draft for us to now review and make the necessary suggestions, amendments, changes as we see fit. Once we are completed in terms of that process, we would now be required to take that along with our report to the House for them to also take a look, and ultimately it is the House that would make that final decision. Thanks for the reminder, Member Malahoo, for it, and I know Member Paulwell will give us an update because he was suggesting that the opposition would take the document and they would sort of caucus and go through and as a body come back with their suggestions as well. Oh, Member Paulwell, mic is on.
Yes, just 2 points. To kickstart the process, I know that you're anxious for us to be ready to proceed, but to kickstart the process, I think we're going to need Mr. What's his name, Keith?
Mr. Keith, but I don't
Yeah,
agree though, you know, Member
well, I
Paulwell.
don't finish the point.
I want us to read the document first.
No, allow me to finish the point, Chairman. So, to kickstart that process, because I think it's important for context. I think it's important for us as we do the comparative analysis to ground our work. But the more important point I wish to make, Madam Chairman, is that you've really restricted me because you have said that I can't share this document. And it is very difficult for us to have views to do the collaboration if I'm not in a position.
Hold a minute.
Yeah.
I'd actually ask that they take the documents back so that we can share them. So the reason I said don't share this yet, it doesn't say draft in any place, and that concerned me when we walked out of last meeting.
Why, Chairman?
No, it doesn't say draft.
Yes.
So I do not want this to appear as if this is the standing order.
But
so,
nobody could think that way.
No. I
Chairman.
refuse to assume anything.
No, this
so
is
members, no, sir. Members, I had asked the committee clerk if he could pull back our copies and just stamp draft through them, which he didn't get back yours. No, so let's do that. And then Member Paulwell, to your concern, you wouldn't be limited because you would now be circulating draft documents for everybody to consider to go through. I would love for Sean to come and give us that preliminary discourse. We would not keep him long. Madam Clerk, I would ask that he give us a couple of minutes you know, even half an hour just to give us a general discussion. What I do not want to do is to create the perception that we are not interested in reading or being prepared. That concerns me. So we would have taken time to go and to read and to take a look at it ourselves. I don't want us to go there looking like we're totally unprepared. And I know what it felt like in the training when I was there as speaker and most embarrassed when they asked a question and the entire set of members seated there just went silent. We couldn't answer at all. Now, many will say we are not special. In a lot of the parliaments across the world, persons do not spend as much time delving through the material as they should. But we do not want for a moment for them to think Jamaica is not prepared. So when we start out, members, I want us to look very prepared and look like we only need him for additional support, but not to, you know, spoon feed us and to hold our hands through the entire process. And really not for us to be in a need to go over the entire thing. So, Member Paulwell, to your point, I definitely would want the opposition to go through, government members who are interested in going through, and then to come back. And I would want to profess one word of caution. Standing orders are generated over many, many years. They are not things that you just change on a whim. I heard you on your interview. So it is not something you change on a whim. It is going to be grounded in the appreciation that it really must always not matter who is government and who is opposition as we go forward. Clark?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's being proposed that for the next committee meeting, when we have Mr. Kinsey present with us, that he will give some sort of contextual background just for the benefit of members, and that we proceed in a chronological order unless the committee decides otherwise. But the intention too is for him to be able to give some sort of contextual background on any specific clause, new clauses that members are concerned about. So it's not just to go over the comparative table, but with the intention that work will actually commence, or the discussions as to how we can proceed.
I'm going to recirculate front page. I'm going to recirculate just the front page, and it will say draft, all right? Well, it doesn't say, it says revised date, month, year. You have another sheet that's a revised draft? Right, so just this front sheet, I'll do that for, and we'll minute it that this, again, should have been minuted in the last minutes. That is a draft document. Right, and it says it's a draft revised standing orders, which it will say again, and we'll just put a front sheet draft so that it can be shared. I don't know, you have two mics on. Let me take Member Green, then Member Malahoo. You change your mind, Member Malahoo?
No, Madam Chair, I just heard the exchange. So as a general rule in the jurisdiction, draft laws are not circulated as a general rule, but there is an exception to the general rule. A draft can be released for consultation and feedback, and I think it is under that exception that it would become available. Because the standing orders are regulations to the Constitution, please pardon my extreme caution in how we approach it, because it will also be a learning experience for all of us. I would therefore suggest that in releasing as an exception to the general rule the draft regulations for consultation, that be made explicitly clear. It will not restrict the use of it, but it is also important that we document our process along the way, that it provides guidance and record going forward. That's the first point.
Member Green?
So I think Member Malahoo treated with part thereof. I think as far as for us to generate conversation among parliamentarians in our separate caucuses, and I think, you know, what should happen is that the members who sit in this committee should undertake to share and to lead that process, right? In other words, as Member Paulwell has indicated in the last meeting, I think we would also want to engage our parliamentary side around the proposed changes. And I definitely think we should set a clear time frame for us to have that done, whether we say we get that done within the next month, right? That the documentation, the proposed changes, the draft standing orders is shared in that context, right? And that it is used for consultation with the parliamentarians. I think after that, emerging from that, there may be some questions. I think it would make sense that when we have the Kingsley here to present on, you know, context in general, but that we come with, as the clerk has said, if we have specific questions. So it's not that he is going to go clause by clause, right? He may outline the context, but if we have specific questions, and it would make sense if we have questions that have come from the consultation, then we raise that. And then after that, I think it would be then for the committee, as again the clerk and yourself has kind of indicated, to now go into a clause by clause determination of what we're accepting so that we can make a recommendation to the House, right? I would say that is the way forward. I do believe, and I join with Member Malahoo, I do believe that it's important that the Parliament takes ownership of this process, right? These are rules that parliamentarians are going to be governed by, and that we are going to say that we are adhering to. And I think it's very, very important that we who sit in this House, who have this opportunity, take charge of that process and see that process through to completion. We've spoken about it for a long time, so in my mind, the quicker we can really start deliberating on the actual suggested changes, the better. But I would suggest that approach, which is accords to with what Member Paulwell had said earlier. So that would be my suggestion.
Thanks, Member Green. Member Buchanan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did review the document. I must share with the committee what I'm having difficulty with. There are several constitutional references And in terms of amendments to the standing orders, how do we treat with the actual constitutional amendments? And
you would not have seen any constitutional amendments from the old standing order to the
no,
new
what
one.
I'm saying is references to the Constitution.
No, but you wouldn't see any. So please highlight for our benefit if you see new
So
references.
I had raised
Yes,
on,
please,
on
because
the,
you
on the
shouldn't
last
see-
occasion I had raised on the last occasion, and it's actually in the minutes, reference to the penalty of £10, which was
That's from the old.
yeah, the member Malahu for would have pointed me to the fines now being the sum of $20 or something like that. The amendment I speak of is those fines
to
would
adjust.
be the adjustment.
Okay.
So again, other references and the adjustments. How do I treat with the adjustment, because we are updating a document for introducing a new workable, user-friendly document with old
Fees.
reference fees and stuff like that. Yeah.
Understandable. Those, like the fees, will be an easy matter for us to seek consensus from other members. I am going to go to Member Malahu for it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I suggest for the committee's consideration that the decision just taken be formally recorded as a recommendation of the committee. One, that the draft document be permitted to be circulated by members on their respective side for consultation, and that members would take the responsibility of ensuring that the discussions take place within the respective caucuses on either side.
Within a period of not exceeding 1 month, and be back at the next standing orders committee meeting in 4 weeks' time.
May I suggest, Madam Clerk, that, Madam Chair, that I believe all members would be seized of the urgency of dealing with it, but perhaps a little feedback on the timeline for consideration. So you would be recommending a month?
We
which-
actually have gotten a month already.
I
So this would be an additional month. So we should have been going through the process of the review, which is why I was saying to Member Paulwell, I'm a little uncomfortable having Mr. Kingsley come, and it doesn't appear as if we have already, substantially gone
So-
through and have questions for him. So would you recommend that we give a little bit more time than that?
I would just say, Madam, I
Members?
appreciate the importance of having a time bound within which to do the work. I really appreciate it. Having said that, I think the respective leaders of government and opposition businesses who are part of the committee may be better able to give an indication as to the sufficiency of the time. But my
Leader of government
recommendation,
business said 4 weeks, 1 month. Opposition business, what say you?
then
That
that's
sounds good for
agreed.
you too?
So that be reduced as a recommendation of
So
the
as a
committee
recommendation,
for the
4
reporting
weeks
back.
to be
One of the
reporting
goals
back.
being set is that the House collectively will take ownership of the rules that emerge. And so the records
Absolutely.
should show that responsibility is accepted by the respective leaders of each side to ensure that the respective caucuses discuss the matters. Since the
Absolutely.
committee is just a sample of the House.
Absolutely.
And let it be so recorded. That's the first point. I will pause and come back to the other.
That looks like the 9th of June, and the notations have been taken. Clark?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In response to Member Buchanan's comment regarding the Constitution, just to clarify, there was an error in one of the drafts making reference to £10. However, for the other substantive areas where there would be references to the Constitution, it's in direct relation as to how we operate. So for an example, how members of parliament are appointed, which that is in the Constitution, how the presiding officer, in this case the Speaker, is appointed, and also how do we vote when we have like deeply entrenched provisions because you're not using simple majority. So the references in the Constitution would be directly related to how we function in the House to ensure that there are no breaches. So that's as far as how it would go.
So
Thank
members, I am making a suggestion, just incorporating the concerns of Member Paulwell, that we sort of embark formally on this process with that initial discussion with Sean Kingsley. I'm going to ask him to meet with us via Zoom. So House Leader had asked that someone moves a motion in Parliament to allow the committee to meet by Zoom just for the purpose of doing that initial discussion with him. And we would do that within the week. As soon as he gives us his availability, we circulate via email, and then that allows us to just sit and listen to him, hear about the structure, ask him any preliminary questions that we have. Then we would go off based on the discussion, and both House Leader and Leader of Opposition Business would go off and caucus with their respective members, and that would go another 4 weeks. That takes us to June 16th. If we're not having a sitting on that day, then equally for ease of doing business, we would get back and we would schedule one closest to one of the sitting days right around that time, at which point we would come back here for discussion, and we would be hearing feedback from all the members from the two caucuses. Would you want us to invite Sean to that meeting, that first meeting back as well? What say you? Yes? Maybe useful. So we would do that. So note it. All right? And then I am sure it means we will still come back. So at that meeting, we will then schedule another. By then, having taken this approach, hopefully we would have had the buy-in, you know, the ability to move forward with some level of negotiated speed. One would say informed speed, because all the members would have had an opportunity to go through and give their own feedback, and it should help to facilitate us being able to wrap up this process. Remember, it doesn't prevent us from going back if we do need to make an amendment here or there, but this would be the most fulsome review that we have had for some time. All right, members? Question, Member Malahoo Fort and members of the committee. So we have outlined the basis on which we will proceed. The question to the committee is, do we want to give an interim report to the Parliament that they can know we are currently in the review and this is what we have set out and this is the confirmation from each side? So we will do an interim report. What say all of us? May I see show of hands if we're comfortable with an interim report to the House? All right. Yeah, even tomorrow sitting is good, just so that we are keeping the House abreast of the commitments that we have made. All right.
Madam Chair, that would have been my next suggestion.
Okay.
That as a background to the motion, for the committee to sit in hybrid or in
yes, so both hybrid and to just give an interim report. Last but not least, Member Paulwell asked why not just circulate it widely. For committee discussions, normally the reports that we have in committees, we would deliberate as a committee. It would not be a wide circulation in the initial stage. And we have already taken it a bit further. The persons who this document will impact in a significant way will be the members of the House. And we have already taken an approach that incorporates the members of the House generally. So I think we have gone as far as we probably will need to do in the exercise of going through these standing orders. If we have no other suggestions, we have one more. Come along, ma'am.
Well,
you may go ahead, Member Malahou.
It's on another point, not in relation to the interim report, Madam Chair. But one of the issues that arose at the last meeting was whether any provisions of the Constitution would be impacted. And there are a number of provisions that you may wish to invite the assistance of the clerk and the legislative team to just look at those under the part dealing with Parliament. But I note that something immediately jumped out at me on, this copy is not paginated, but under the proposed Part 1, Order 2, interpretation, it proposes that the Interpretation Act of 1968 shall apply to the interpretation of the orders. You may wish to have that check. I could offer a view, but I will reserve my view at this time. But Section 2, subsection 12 of the Constitution makes it clear that it is the Interpretation Act of 1889 that applies to the interpretation of the Constitution. It is one of the constitutional reform issues that not many people are aware of. Like I say, I could offer my view, but I will reserve it. But you may wish to have the committee be guided on whether this can be done, because these are regulations of the Constitution, and the power given to the Parliament to regulate its own proceedings are subject to the provisions of the Constitution. And we do have something that not many are aware of, that it's not the 1968 Interpretation Act that applies to the interpretation of the Constitution of Jamaica, but the 1889 Act, frozen in time.
Will someone please move for the adjournment of this meeting?
I so move. June 16. June 16. All being the next meeting, June 16. No, well,
yes, the date was set as first. We will confirm.
But the intention is
and
to have a
Zoom meeting,
a hybrid meeting in the interim.
In the interim, within the next week, just for the committee to be, given a sense of the background and structure from Mr. Kingsley, and then for us to meet 4 weeks from there.
No problem. Let's all move.
So moved by Member Green, seconded.
Warning, lightning storm created. Our base is under attack.
community. You know, currently we have, according to the Mona Aging and Wellness Center led by Professor Elimaya Shearer, who is sitting in the gallery, we have approximately 375,000 Jamaicans 60 years and over. That number is expected to grow to 400,000 by 2030 and is growing at a faster rate than birth rate and other age categories. The truth is, we are experiencing a demographic shift, Madam Speaker, a demographic shift that is going to require significant more attention for persons who are 60 years and over, particularly the context in which most have at least one NCD, and in many cases, multiple lifestyle-related diseases. These are our aunts, our mothers, and indeed, in this house, many of us, some of us, it's time to consider this as a serious issue. Madam Speaker, this year we'll be launching geriatric clinics in St. Anne and St. Catherine at a community and district health center, and the intention here is to build out a regime, a policy approach to dealing with those persons over 60 and the particular needs that they have. We'll be combining these efforts with the Ministry of Social Security, National Council for Senior Citizens, and local government and community organizations, Madam Speaker, as part of our intervention at community and family level. The third, Madam Speaker, is menopause and andropause and community support systems. Menopause, Madam Speaker, menopause typically occurs among women in their 40s and 50s. Approximately 240,000 women suffer or fall in this age cohort. And the symptoms are varied: hot flashes, fatigue, mood instability, vaginal dryness, and it can be worse. We have been silent on this issue. And these are our women, our very important productive years of their lives. These are our mothers, our aunts, our sisters. The time has come for us to right-size our health system to respond to this as a problem in order to overcome the challenges that these women face. But the men are not to be left out, because 145,000 men fall in the 51 to 60 age cohort. They are not menopause, by the way. They are andropause. And just to be clear, they are andropause, right? And what this is an age-related condition. That's why you're so miserable, but you don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe. Madam Speaker, this is age-related testosterone decline affects men gradually, typically becoming more evident during that age. Symptoms include reduced libido, erectile dysfunction, fatigue, depression, loss of muscle mass. It's, we know, because we refer to it as midlife crisis. Okay, midlife crisis. Madam Speaker, what the research has shown is that countries with formal menopause strategy achieve more consistent care and better access to services. Today, Madam Speaker, I want to identify which work that has already been done by Professor Shearer and the Aging Committee, which I appointed, and these are the following things which will happen in the months to come. Drafting of a menopause andropause policy, which will go to Cabinet this month. Once approved, will go to the Chief Parliamentary Council. Policy is almost complete based on consultation. A national education health promotion program, training program to ensure that menopause and andropause are covered in health professional curricula, and engaging a consultant to work with professional groups so that we can normalize the conversation. Part of that discussion could be clinical application, medication, and that conversation is taking place. But this year, this will be a major issue. Madam Speaker, this issue affects almost 400,000 Jamaicans and their quality of life. We have to deal with this. The fourth, Madam Speaker, is training for home care for the older persons and disabled. Jamaica already relies on a significant but largely invisible care system for older persons and people living with disabilities at the family and community levels. These are called unpaid caregivers. These are our children, the aunts, the cousin, the neighbor, the church brother or sister. They are the ones who take care of the old person who is at home and are not paid. They do it. They are like the social conscience of family and community. Madam Speaker, the time has come to recognize them and to salute them. And this is not unique to Jamaica. Studies support this across the world. Studies from POW, IDB, and otherwise. This year, we'll commence a phased pilot of home-based long-term care that includes unpaid caregivers as part of the care team for older persons and persons with disabilities. During the last year, we trained some 148 community health aides. Professor Shearer will oversee a national training program for community caregivers on how to care for older persons and persons with disability. A task force will be established, including the Ministries of Labour and Social Security, local government, churches, community organizations, and aged care organizations, and their main function will be to identify persons for training, ensuring wide community participation. We have already started that dialogue, but Madam Speaker, we must recognize our unpaid caregivers. They number in the thousands and hundreds of thousands, and give them an opportunity to understand how to treat a cousin who has autism, or a 75-year-old mother who has a stroke and don't know how to turn them. That's how we get social cases, because people just don't know how to cope. This is part of family and community which we must take on and address, Madam Speaker. And we are allocating $50 million to this effort, and in the first year we're hoping to train some 5,000 caregivers, Madam Speaker. The next one is lifestyle clinics, which is number 5. Obesity, of course, is a major challenge contributing to real issues in our society. Madam Speaker, this year we intend to establish lifestyle clinics, one in each region, to look at our life course approach supported by an integrated network of care. The initiative is designed to provide comprehensive, multidisciplinary, patient-centered clinical management. There's a lot of talk about the GLP-1s, you know, the Ozempics and so on, which is now the big conversation around controlling obesity, or some people do it for fashion too, you know, being slim, because slim is in. Well, we're not promulgating this as the sole solution, just to be clear. We're really focusing on lifestyle. And what we want to do is establish these clinics where someone who is obese, which is the gateway condition for cardiovascular disease, for hypertension, for diabetes, we need to normalize the conversation around obesity. It's not cool to be obese. It is going to compromise and undermine quality of life, and we need to integrate that into our community and family response. The 6th, Madam Speaker, is fertility and responsible parenting. Bear in mind, we're looking at the social determinants of health, and we're now at 6 of 10. Jamaica's total fertility rate has fallen to some 1.3 child per woman, below the 2.1 replacement rate. This has several implications apart from the economic issues around workforce. Social support system are compromised. Consequences include aging population, rising dependency, reduced domestic economic activity, shrinking human capital. Madam Speaker, the evidence is suggesting that no single intervention reverses declining fertility. And I know that I've been accused of telling people to go and have children. But that's not really what I said. I may be encouraging it, but there are conditions. There are conditions, right? And I'm going to touch on that. So, sustained policy environment of having and raising children, physical, financial, and psychological. Now, when you look at the international data, the data suggests the following. There are 5 pillars that we need to now explore, and we intend to over the next year. One is financial support, expanding child credit, tax credits, introducing tiered child allowance, phase responsible parenting initiative grants. Next one is leave and work family reform. We have had maternity and paternity leave, but there are others. The third is affordable child care, subsidizing nurseries and daycare fees, expanding community early childhood centers, introducing universal pre-K for all 4-year-olds, establishing after-school care for primary schools within the work environment. The fourth category is reproductive health, strengthening infertility treatment access within the public health system, launching a national male reproductive health initiative, scaling antenatal education and improving postnatal medical health screening. And the fifth, which is parenting education and communities, scaling evidence-based parenting programs through clinics and schools. Madam Speaker, this is not an announcement of policy, just to be clear, right? Policy is developed, ultimately approved at the level of cabinet. But I believe the time has come for a conversation at the level of communities and families. The consultation with the Minister of Labour and Social Security, we propose a multi-stakeholder national task force on fertility and responsible parenting, drawing membership from health, labour, finance, education, the private sector, academia and civil society. And the task force will produce a national fertility and family support strategy with clear targets, Madam Speaker, subject, of course, to the discussion and agreement of Cabinet. Madam Speaker, let me be clear. The government is not asking Jamaicans to have children for statistical reasons. It is committed to building conditions where family formation is genuinely affordable, structurally supported and celebrated. The intention is to pursue this initiative to affirm that this government continues to believe that family remains the foundation of the nation's future, Madam Speaker. But there's another issue that's worth noting, and I won't spend much time on it. But the demographic paradox, I classify it as, even as fertility has fallen well below replacement level, issues of paternity uncertainty remains widespread, with research suggesting that roughly 1 in 4 cases may involve misattributed fatherhood. And you know the other term for misattributed fatherhood, right? Okay, fine. Yes, the member from Central St. James has spent a lot of time speaking of it. Together, these dynamics point not just to fewer births, but to deeper challenges around trust, family formation, and the social conditions that shape decisions about having and raising children. Now, this is not the public health implications of misattributed fatherhood are significant, just to be clear. And I could give many other implications, but, effects on identity, emotional security, family medical history, mental health issues. The research is very clear that this is something that we should not encourage. Madam Speaker, the truth is, if you're going to live it up, you must also own it up. Yes. And I think there needs to be a conversation around paternity issues in our country at this time, because it has implications for the quality of family and community, and also to ensure that there's greater harmony at that level, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the 7th one is period poverty and adolescent health. Period poverty is the inability to afford or access essential menstrual products, education and sanitation facilities. It causes significant health risk, shame and stigma, forcing many to use unsafe alternatives or to miss schoolwork. Key causes include high cost, lack of infrastructure, and systematic inequality. Globally, over 500 women lack access to menstrual facilities. Yes. And this is not just for Jamaica. In the US, it's 1 in 4. So it's a problem right across. Madam Speaker, we all must be concerned about period poverty among our young girls in schools. It's not just a hygiene issue, but a systemic barrier that keeps girls out of classroom, undermine their academic potential, and reinforce cycles of inequality and poverty. 1 in 4, Madam Speaker, according to the stats, girls in low-income Jamaica communities miss school during their period due to lack of sanitary products. 30% of public schools provide free menstrual products, and period-related absenteeism is linked to low academic performance and wider gap. This year, Madam Speaker, we will establish the National Menstrual Health Equity Initiative to alleviate period poverty among school-age girls in Jamaica through strategic partnerships with the Ministry of Education and existing civic multilateral groups such as HerFlow and UNICEF. We'll be embarking on a multi-sectorial national menstrual health equity pilot initiative involving 8 schools, approximately 2,000 girls. Schools will be selected based on the high level of path students within the schools. We are allocating some $50 million to this initiative, and coming out of this initiative, Madam Speaker, we hope to achieve a policy around addressing the issue of period poverty in our society. Madam Speaker, we must promote good hygiene and health practices for our young girls. It is important. part of that campaign on menstrual wellness will include WASH, which is water, sanitation, and hygiene, improvements, HPV vaccination, personal hygiene education, and HIV STI prevention, Madam Speaker. The 8th, Madam Speaker, is Jamaica Moves, and I won't spend much time on this, but we're coming back. We're going to ramp up Jamaica Moves as a community event. Jamaica Moves exists. It's now in the schools, it's now in the communities, but there was a time when everybody wanted a Jamaica Move shirt or a water bottle, including the opposition members who used to dance on stage all over the place when we had executions in the towns, yes? I remember the member who was at Central Manchester, now in Southern Manchester. He was on the stage dancing with Audley Shaw. Audley beat him, of course. Audley was a much better dancer than him, right? But we're coming back with it, and more will be said on that. That is being worked out. The 9th is mental health and community support, Madam Speaker. Mental health is a real challenge, and it's expanding. But let me just say this. Mental health cannot be solved by institutionalization. It starts in the families and in the communities. And if we don't sensitize the families and the communities to deal with symptoms of mental health and to accommodate, to support, to refer, to address mental health issues, we will never solve the problem. So this one is big in terms of community support. This year we'll be doing a number of things. The National Mental Health Policy will be promulgated. We're going to be training 200 laypersons as part of problem management providers within communities. These are the opinion leaders, members of the church, members of civil society. They must at least be able to recognize and to listen and to refer, as well as 145 psychiatric nursing assistants will be trained this year, and 50 guidance counselors under the school mental health literacy program, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, mental health challenges starts in the home and the communities. We have to start there to address the problem, Madam Speaker. The final one, Madam Speaker, the 10 of the social determinants of health is around substance abuse and community support. The National Drug Prevalence Survey shows that the substances most used in Jamaica are alcohol, cannabis, and tobacco. Among this, alcohol remains by far the most dominant. In fact, I said to the National Council on Drug Abuse recently, 2 weeks ago, I said, you probably need to change your name. I'm told I have 15 more minutes. Thank you. I said, we probably need to change your name because Jamaica really doesn't have a cocaine problem of such. Jamaica has an abuse of legal substances problem. And many of them are right on our kitchen table or in our fridge. And they are addictive. And they create the obesity that creates the hypertension and the diabetes. And to the extent that we abuse them, it's a problem. So we're going to be looking at these new substances that are being abused. Some of them are psychoactive substances like Molly and ecstasy and so on, especially among young adults. But we intend to widen that conversation. As a result, Madam Speaker, there are a couple of areas I want to specify that we will intervene on. One of them is energy drinks and alcohol consumption. Everybody know what it's called. It's called special. Special on the street, right? Everybody drinking a special now. Now, let me give you the science of special. Energy drinks are non-alcoholic beverages containing high levels of stimulant, primarily caffeine. Caffeine is a stimulant and alcohol is a depressant. Caffeine masks the feeling of being drunk and encourages binge drinking, higher blood alcohol concentration. When you mix alcohol with energy drink, you mask intoxication, encouraging heavier and more prolonged drinking while amplifying the risky behavior. And there are many risky behaviors. I tell you, I was in the beautiful parish of Westmoreland. And I was at a little place having a little water. Water? Yes, a little water. And talking to some guys, and one of the guys said to the boss, "You saved my life." I said, "Really, what happened?" He said, "Well, I had an experience," and his friend started to tell me the story. So he had this young lady he had to go meet. And, you know, he has a performance matrix. Let me put it no more nowhere than that. And that performance matrix involves him purchasing two, no man, not ecstasy tablet, two performance tablets. Yes, two performance tablets, and drink a bottle of energy drink with a pure white rum. I'm not calling any brand name, sir. You call it. I'm not calling it. And after he developed the performance matrix, he jumped on his bike to ride to the location. He ended up in a wall and spent 1 month in the hospital at Sablamar Hospital. Now let me give you another statistic that tells us that unless we intervene in the community, we have a problem. The last time I toured Sablamar Hospital, 80% of the male surgical wards were occupied by young men riding bikes without helmets. And they occupy the accident and emergency, the surgical wards. It is a real challenge. And 90% of them are intoxicated for whatever reason or whatever motivation. Madam Speaker, we have to intervene. So we are going to be doing a national rapid situation assessment as it relates to the impact of energy drink and alcohol. We're also going to be launching Operation Lighthouse, 50 communities island-wide for substance misuse prevention. We're going to be tackling vaping or anti-vaping, particularly in our schools. Madam Speaker, the vaping materials look like pens and pencils, and we are going to be targeting the suppliers because the National Council on Drug Abuse has the authority to deal with those who are selling vaping materials to underage. Madam Speaker, today I have given you what I classify as a policy pivot towards a more social, community, family determinants of health. I am encouraging society, NGOs, all concerned, join us in health and as a government. Let us take back our communities. Let us promulgate good family values within our society so that we can build a better and more productive society where we can be our brother's keeper as we used to be. That is the real Jamaican-ness, Madam Speaker, and I want to promulgate that and advance that over the next year or two. Madam Speaker, I turn now to an accountability framework quickly. Madam Speaker, over the past several months, the Ministry of Health and Wellness and its agencies have been the subject of extensive assessment. The most common one being most talked about, the Auditor General's report at the UHWI. These reviews have revealed shortcomings in administrative performance and accountability that must now be addressed with urgency and discipline. The findings have prompted a focused policy response in 3 critical areas: governance and oversight, financial and procurement accountability, and capacity and performance management across the health portfolio. Madam Speaker, we are fully mindful of the constitutional separation between policy, administration, and operation, and the statutory role of boards under the PBMA Act. For the next 12 to 18 months, Madam Speaker, we will be moving to establish internal systems to address a number of the areas that we think are where we have shortcomings. Some are rules that are already in place but need to be enforced, but we will also be imposing some timelines and some appropriate level of sanctions for non-compliance. Financial accountability, Madam Speaker. All regional health authorities will be required to bring their financial statements and reports tabled in Parliament fully up to date within the next 12 months. Boards and regional directors will be held directly accountable for delivery. Health professional councils, many of which are seriously non-compliant, will be required to submit action plans to regularize their financial reporting and to clear at least 10% of their outstanding backlog within the same period. The ministry itself is expected to be current with its appropriations account in compliance with the Financial Administration and Audit Act, and the Permanent Secretary and the relevant central authorities have been mandated to ensure that that takes place within that time. In terms of procurement reform, the over-reliance on direct contracting presents a significant governance risk. Accordingly, from Monday, June 1, 2026, and for a period of 12 months, all direct contracting above statutory threshold, except in the case of the National Health Fund, will require independent validation. Boards will be required to approve certified procurement plans. No financial commitment will be supported outside of the approved plans, and a zero-tolerance approach will be enforced for non-compliance with the government of Jamaica e-procurement platform and immediate consequences for breaches. In terms of statutory declarations, Madam Speaker, the misuse of income tax, education tax, and NHT deductions to fund operations is unlawful and unacceptable. From Monday, June 1, 2026, a zero-tolerance approach will apply. Executives who authorize or facilitate such breaches will face disciplinary action, including statutory surcharges where applicable, while legacy arrears will be addressed to new statutory liabilities will be permitted. We cannot have people having their monies deducted and not paying over where it needs to be paid over, Madam Speaker. Performance and capacity. All agencies will transition fully to the performance management and appraisal system, PMAS, within 12 months, and at least 70% of organizational functions assessed under PMAS. Same time, a coordinated recruitment initiative. I've asked the regions to hire where they have posts, because part of the excuse of not getting things done is that they don't have enough people. So there's a timeline on this, 75% of vacancies to be filled within 12 months. Governance and oversight, Madam Speaker, and this now involves some of the university issues, a comprehensive legislation review of the health governance framework, including the Health Services Act and the UHWI Act, will be undertaken this year, consistent with the Mitchell Report and Vision for Health 2030. From Monday, June 1, 2026, all internal audit units will submit reports directly to the ministry. This will inform my quarterly oversight meetings with board chairpersons with persistent non-compliance attracting decisive action. This one is important, service delivery and public trust. We have to improve the compassion within our health institutions, how we administer care. Accountability has no meaning if it is not reflected in the patient experience. Therefore, a client-centered, rights-based approach to service delivery is being advanced, supported by measurable services, standards, and satisfaction matrix, and reinforced by transparent public reporting. Madam Speaker, we have established this accountability framework internally. I've met with all the regions, all the board chair, all our public bodies. I've explained it to them, and we intend to move swiftly to ensure that we are compliant as outlined in the presentation. Madam Speaker, I want to close by looking at our legislative agenda. Very important. This year, the ministry will pursue several matters in the legislative agenda, including tobacco, Food and Drug and Nurse and Midwives Act. Tobacco Control Bill we expect to be tabled within the next month. This has gone to Cabinet. We had a joint select committee. I thank those who have played a role, but that is going to happen momentarily. Food and Drug Amendment Bill seeks to regulate natural health products, including nutraceuticals, under the Food and Drug Act. The amendment bill and regulations are on track for the ministry to proceed with legislative committee this 26-27. Amendment to the Nurses and Midwives Act. Madam Speaker, this is very important. We're well advanced, and this year we intend to come to the Parliament with the Nurses and Midwives Act to give our advanced nursing practitioners more authority. They are the ones who man some of the most remote health centers. If they have to administer a vaccine or write a prescription within limitations, we expect that this year will be the case. Funeral homes regulations, Madam Speaker, we will take to Parliament this year to address the many funeral homes that are unregulated and pose a health risk. That is in the final stages. And finally, I want to announce that we will shortly be announcing a committee to review the Public Health Act. I must tell you, I was a little disappointed when COVID struck, and as a health emergency, we could not use the Public Health Act to guide the response, because that's what the Public Health Act should do, but because of shortcomings. So this year, Madam Speaker, we intend to begin a process, which I believe would take about 2 years, to take the most comprehensive piece of legislation guiding health, the Public Health Act, and review that. And we intend to engage a wide cross-section of society in that regard, including members of the opposition, because this is necessary, given all the other advancement that we are making as it relates to public health. Madam Speaker, I apologize in advance for rushing the presentation. I have 3 minutes to go, so I didn't do too badly, House Leader and Madam Speaker. And thank you for helping me by greeting all my colleagues so that I did not have to do so. But since I have 2 minutes, I want to greet the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. I want to greet my Minister of State, who has been amazing. Can you just give her a round of applause, please? She's a champion. She's a champion. She worked hard. And I tell you, don't bother contest her in that seat down in St. Ann, because she's here to stay. And she's a policy maker. I want to recognize my constituents. I know my councillors are here, so many of them, members of the Ministry of Health and Wellness, PSCMO, members of our PAHO and all the other groups, the NGOs that are here. I can't call all the names, but I have the 2 minutes, so I want to just recognize them because I didn't take the chart. Today is International Nurses Day, and I want to just big up all our nurses. Sorry I couldn't go to the event. Madam Speaker, in keeping with what we do every year, because we know time is limited, we publish limited copies, a lot of information, because we're a transparent government and a transparent ministry. And we want you to have the information. But it's limited, but it will be on the website. So we have vitals. We're looking at sodium and sodium impact. Salt, some people call it. We have a glance at tobacco use in Jamaica. We have sweetened beverages consumption in Jamaica, the facts. Jamaica's population health report, 2019 to 2024. Very interesting reading around the decline in our population and birth rate and some of the reasons. Also have a glance at alcohol use in Jamaica. And I believe we have a ministry paper that speaks to all the areas I have not mentioned, because we are a big ministry, as well as our health system strengthening. And just to be totally transparent again, we have tabled a copy of the report of the University Hospital of the West Indies, institutional review for all who wants to read and understand what is happening. Madam Speaker, yes, I said that. Madam Speaker, I really want to take the last few seconds to say to the Prime Minister, thank you, sir, for the confidence you have reposed in me over the last 10 years. I am not perfect, and we make mistakes, but we're human. What I will tell you, I have never not engaged anyone who has a criticism, and I do try to ensure that where those criticisms are constructive, I will take them on board. Health is not a partisan issue, and not everything we must try to wring political advantage out of. We must recognize, as they say, today for me, tomorrow for you. And no matter who you are, health and access to health should be a universal principle. And that's how we see it, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, with these announcements, I hope on behalf of the government and all healthcare workers that our mission over the next term is clear. Working together for better families, for better communities, collaboratively so, and of course, ultimately, for better health, because that's where it all starts. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. God bless. God bless Jamaica, land we love. Y'all get $1 million. Turns out. Yeah. PS3. I'm going on.
really write any extraordinary. It's CM General Manager.
Madam Speaker, let us thank the Minister of Health. Definitely when you see all the infrastructure work that's happening in health in Jamaica, there will be no doubt that this Minister of Health has left an indelible mark. We will now turn to the member from St. Andrew Western for his contribution to the sectorial debate.
In the interest of equity and time, I would like to make special welcome the students here in support of the presentation of the member from St. Andrew Western, the students from Edith Dalton James High School. Welcome to the houses. I also see Senator Keisha Anderson. I'm sure she's also here in support of the member for his sectoral presentation. Welcome to the houses. Members, please make welcome the member from St. Andrew Western, who will now make his presentation to the sectoral debate.
Madam Speaker, permission to speak from a seat other than my own. Permission to speak.
Permission granted.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I rise at the beginning of my 7th term in this honorable House to make my presentation in the sectoral debate as opposition spokesman on industry, trade, and global logistics. No one can achieve this milestone alone, Madam Speaker. The persons on this journey to be thanked are too numerous to mention, and I don't have the time that the speaker before me does. But I begin by thanking my God, from whom all blessings flow. Then I would thank my family, broadly, Madam Speaker. First of all, my direct family, my daughter, Nile, who is today sitting her CXC exams, and her mother, who I understand choose to be near her today. I want to recognize my other family, both politically in the political party and in the House as a whole, my colleagues on both sides of the House, of the aisle. I thank my party leader, Mr. Mark Golding, leader of opposition, for giving me the opportunity to shepherd this portfolio once again. Madam Speaker, I thank everybody, my councillors who are here and my constituents who are here, but I know they understand in the interest of time, I need to move on. But before I do so, I want to especially thank Ms. Keisha Anderson, my assistant, who made a special effort to be here this afternoon. So thank you, Keisha, for being here. Madam Speaker, there are moments in the life of a nation that demand more than the management of the present. They demand vision, courage, and leadership, willing to confront the future honestly while positioning a country to benefit from what is coming next. This, Madam Speaker, is one of those moments. Jamaica stands at a decisive turning point in global economic history. The architecture of international trade and investment is being redesigned at an extraordinary pace. Supply chains that took decades to build are now being dismantled and redrawn. Entire industries are relocating. New manufacturing corridors are emerging, and strategic alliances are being redefined. The decoupling of the world's two largest economies, the reshaping reshaping of global commerce and creating opportunities that will either be claimed within the decade or lost for generations. And of course, we here in Jamaica have critical infrastructure and an economy to reconstruct in the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa. At one extreme, Madam Speaker, countries are retreating into isolationism, turning inward and threatening the very fabric of global trade, as we once understood it. At the other, there remains hope for stable, rules-based systems grounded in cooperation, predictability, and mutual benefit. The war in Iran and the growing instability across parts of the Middle East have only intensified global uncertainty and deepened the urgency surrounding economic security and supply chain resilience. But let us be honest with ourselves, Madam Speaker. The world is not returning to what it was. What is emerging instead is a more fragmented and competitive global economy, reorganizing into powerful regional blocs where countries are aggressively positioning themselves to secure supply chains, attract investment, dominate strategic industries, and strengthen regional influence. Other nations, some smaller than Jamaica and with fewer natural advantages, have already made strategic decisions about where they intend to compete. Costa Rica did so in biotechnology and medical devices. Panama did so in logistics and financial services sectors. The Dominican Republic is doing so now in nearshoring and light manufacturing. They are not waiting for certainty or a settled world order. They are moving with urgency because they understand that nations positioning themselves early will shape the next era of prosperity, while those that hesitate will spend the next generation watching. The question before us today is simple. Where is Jamaica positioning? Where is Jamaica positioning itself within this new global reality? Madam Speaker, Jamaica possesses the geographic location, the human capital, the English-speaking workforce, and the proximity to some of the largest consumer markets on earth. We sit astride one of the busiest shipping corridors in the world. We possess a globally recognized cultural influence. We have entrepreneurial people, strategic assets, and enormous untapped potential. But potential without strategy is merely an unrealized opportunity. This is the central indictment of this budget, and it is the central challenge I place before this honorable House today. This government, Madam Speaker, has become very comfortable celebrating numbers. It celebrates fiscal discipline. It celebrates stability. It celebrates the growth of Jamaica's net international reserves. And while those things matter, and while macroeconomic discipline is necessary, the Jamaican people are not living inside spreadsheets. They are living in communities where food and fuel prices continue to rise, where wages struggle to keep pace with the cost of living, and where opportunities for upward mobility feel increasingly out of reach. Young professionals are beginning to question whether Jamaica still offers them a future worth investing in. And too many families are struggling simply to maintain stability in their daily lives. And so the question before this honorable House is not merely whether the government can balance accounts. The real question is whether the economy is producing prosperity that people can actually feel in their lives. Jamaicans cannot eat fiscal credibility. They cannot pay mortgages with macroeconomic statistics. And they cannot build businesses from press releases. The Jamaican people deserve more than mere stability management. They deserve a serious national growth strategy. Capable of producing resilience, opportunity, productivity, and long-term prosperity. Madam Speaker, many of us are familiar with the business parable, "Who moved my cheese?" Its lesson is simple, but profound. Change is inevitable, and those who fail to adapt will inevitably be left behind. Today, as we continue the sectoral debate on the 26-27 budget, I ask this government a very simple question. You clearly see that the cheese has moved. So where is the strategy to find it? Where is the strategy to find the cheese? On this side of the House, we are fair in our assessment. The fiscal consolidation undertaken over the last decade has been substantial. Debt to GDP ratios have declined. Primary surpluses have been sustained. Inflation management has improved. Macroeconomic stability has been real and hard-won. Both administrations deserve measured credit for maintaining that discipline because the sacrifices required to achieve it were significant and felt by the Jamaican people. But stability, Madam Speaker, is not development. Stability is simply the foundation upon which development must be built. A stable foundation only matters if something transformative is eventually constructed upon it. And after 10 years, the level of structural transformation Jamaica requires has simply not materialized. The evidence is all around us, Madam Speaker. Manufacturing's contribution to GDP has not significantly expanded. Value-added exports have not meaningfully grown. The trade deficit has ballooned. We remain heavily dependent on tourism, bauxite, and remittances, the same pillars supporting the economy a generation ago. The BPO sector, once heralded as a major source of middle-class opportunity and employment growth, has plateaued and now faces an existential threat from automation and artificial intelligence, a threat this budget barely acknowledges. The logistic hub remains more an aspiration than implementation. Vision 2030, now beyond its midpoint, has seen key structural targets quietly deferred, delayed, and abandoned altogether. Madam Speaker, let us speak honestly about this budget itself. What the Minister of Finance delivered was essentially a hurricane recovery report presented as a growth budget. While we acknowledge the devastating impact of Hurricane Melissa, $12.2 billion in losses, US dollars, nearly 57% of GDP, lives disrupted and livelihood destroyed, acknowledging the crisis is not the same as articulating a strategy for transformation. The Jamaican people deserve more than crisis management. They deserve a coherent plan for growth and national advancement. And the pressures facing ordinary Jamaicans continue to intensify. When oil is trading at nearly US $100 a barrel, while this budget was built on the assumption of US $60 per barrel, someone will pay that difference. It will not be the ministers seated on the government benches. It will be the single mother filling her gas tank. It will be the farmer trying to operate his irrigation pump. It will be the small manufacturer watching electricity costs consume already narrow profit margins. These are the realities confronting Jamaicans every day, realities that cannot be solved by macroeconomic talking points alone. Then we come to MSMEs, the small businesses employing the majority of working Jamaicans. Once again, we heard recycled commitments, verified supplier lists, simplified registration systems, procurement set-asides. We have heard these promises repeatedly over the years. The government may be inclined to point to NARA and FAST as the solution, but those are hoped-for delivery mechanisms, not a comprehensive national growth strategy. And the benefits of NARA and FAST for businesses investing less than US 15 million are highly questionable. Madam Speaker, 1 or 2% growth after a natural disaster is not transformation. It is survival. It is survival. Jamaica deserves more than endurance. It deserves direction. Discipline without direction ultimately becomes endurance without destination. And the Jamaican people, discipline without direction ultimately becomes endurance without destination. And the Jamaican people have endured long enough without seeing the level of transformation their sacrifices were supposed to produce. Madam Speaker, Jamaica has for decades functioned primarily as a trading economy rather than a productive one. We import heavily, distribute locally, and export far too little beyond raw materials and services. This did not happen accidentally. It emerged from deliberate policy choices that consistently favored those who trade over those who produce, those who import over those who manufacture, and those who distribute over those who build. The barriers facing manufacturing are not simply regulatory. They are structural. Energy costs remain among the highest in the region. Trade policies continue to favor import dependency over domestic production. Industrial clustering necessary for achieving scale and competitiveness remains underdeveloped. Bureaucratic delays continue to frustrate productive investment. Access to affordable trade financing remains limited. The result is an economy that protects entrenched commercial interests while linking productive expansion and constraining the ambitions of manufacturers, exporters, and entrepreneurs who want to build and scale within Jamaica and the region. While in opposition, Madam Speaker, the opposition sought to change this trajectory through the Logistic Hub strategy, a framework designed to transform Jamaica into a globally competitive logistics and production center. It was not merely a slogan. It was intended as a comprehensive economic transformation strategy, linking ports, manufacturing, transportation, logistics, technology, and global trade into a unified framework capable of positioning Jamaica as a major regional player in the future economy. Yet, after 10 years, implementation has stalled. According to the World Bank's Logistic Performance Index, Jamaica now ranks 79 of 139 countries, some 27 places lower than in 2014. That is not progress, it is a regression. Jamaica does not need to limit itself to producing only local raw materials. We can become a value-added manufacturing and logistics platform for the region and the wider hemisphere, assembling, processing, packaging, and exporting goods into global markets. Reverse the trade deficit and you reverse the brain drain, Madam Speaker. But achieving that requires coordination, urgency, infrastructure investment, policy alignment, and above all, strategic direction. Instead, agriculture and agro-processing remain chronically underfunded, manufacturing remains constrained, and trade policies continue protecting merchant interests over productive growth. The result is an economy serving a few while limiting the aspirations of the many. And that is why the middle class increasingly feels squeezed. That is why young professionals increasingly feel uncertain about their future here. That is why so many talented Jamaicans continue leaving. Too many no longer believe the economy is structured to reward production, innovation, entrepreneurship, and long-term investment. Madam Speaker, the Minister's financial sector reforms, including raising pension fund investment limits in private equity from 5% to 7.5%, are not without merit. With pension funds holding approximately $847 billion in invested assets, This could unlock significant capital within the Jamaican economy. But capital without strategy, Madam Speaker, is not development. But Jamaica's problem has never been the absence of savings. Our problem has been the failure to channel those savings into industries capable of expanding exports, creating skilled jobs, driving productivity, and producing long-term economic transformation. The budget speaks extensively about reserves, buffers, capital adequacy, and financial regulation. Far less is said about export diversification, industrial upgrading, logistics reform, innovation policy, digital transformation, workforce development, energy competitiveness, and productivity growth. That imbalance matters deeply because a country cannot save its way into prosperity. Reserves preserve stability, but investment builds wealth. Stability without productive expansion ultimately becomes stagnation managed efficiently. In that context, Jamaica must seriously consider establishing a sovereign wealth fund, especially if the buzz about commercial oil, gold, and rare earth elements ever materialize. Countries that successfully transition from stabilization to prosperity do exactly this. They convert national savings or depleting natural resources into productive national assets, capable of generating long-term returns and strategic development. Imagine what such a fund could support in Jamaica: industrial and logistics expansion around the Port of Kingston, manufacturing growth within the Montego Bay Free Zone, integrated logistics infrastructure surrounding Norman Manley and Sangster International Airports, modern irrigation systems and agro-processing expansion in St. Elizabeth, industrial growth corridors across Clarendon, Manchester, and St. Catherine. These are the kinds of strategic investments that produce long-term national productivity and sustainable economic growth. Yet, this budget contains no comprehensive industrial strategy, no logistics roadmap with measurable targets, no structural export diversification plan, and no robust framework for integrating Jamaican producers into global value chains. Meanwhile, manufacturers continue battling high energy costs, bureaucratic delays, and limited access to affordable trade financing. And all of this is happening while the nearshoring window steadily closes around us. Madam Speaker, the global realignment triggered by US-China decoupling is already redistributing manufacturing investment. Mexico, Vietnam, India, Costa Rica, and the Dominican Republic are aggressively positioning themselves to capture that investment. Independent assessments suggest that the primary nearshoring window may close within 3 to 5 years as major investment decisions become unlocked. Countries acting with urgency will secure industries, jobs, and long-term growth. Countries producing only policy papers and studies will watch those opportunities pass them by. Jamaica cannot afford to be left standing at the terminal while other nations board the flight. Madam Speaker, this government has spent years promoting the ambitions, making Jamaica the logistic hub of the Western Hemisphere. I support that ambition. I've championed it for 14 years because I believe Jamaica possesses the location, infrastructure, potential, and strategic advantages necessary to become a major logistic and trade platform within the region. But ambition must be matched by capacity, execution, and credibility. The contradiction at the center of this administration logistics vision is simple. A government struggling to move people within the Kingston metropolitan area efficiently cannot credibly claim it is ready to manage the logistics of the hemisphere. We cannot organize reliable transportation systems for our own citizens. How can we seriously expect investors to believe we are prepared to coordinate sophisticated global supply chains. And nowhere was this contradiction more painfully exposed than after Hurricane Melissa. Madam Speaker, I watched, as all of us did, while the government's logistical systems struggled under pressure. Recovery materials and supplies entered the island within days. Yet, months later, significant quantities of relief goods and building materials remained trapped with inefficient systems, delayed by weak coordination, customs bottlenecks, and poor logistical management. Communities devastated by the hurricane continued waiting, while supplies sat in warehouses and ports. And what happened next was both inspiring and deeply troubling at the same time. The Jamaican people stepped in where the system failed. Community groups organized relief distribution. Churches became supply centers. Fishermen used their boats to reach isolated communities. Taxi operators formed convoys to transport supplies. Citizens coordinated recovery efforts through WhatsApp groups and social media networks. Ordinary Jamaicans mobilized themselves with extraordinary compassion and efficiency because they understood that their fellow citizens could not wait indefinitely for bureaucracy to function. The people became the logistic hub. The people became the supply chain. The people were resilient, but they did so despite the system, not because of it. And 6 months later, many affected communities were still waiting for assistance that should have reached them months earlier. That failure matters. That failure matters because logistics is logistics. If a government cannot effectively manage the logistics of compassion during a national emergency, how can it credibly manage the logistics of global commerce and industrial expansion? So I ask this government plainly today, where are the goods? Who is accountable for the delays? Who is paying the demurrage and storage charges? What systems are now in place to ensure this failure does not repeat itself, as it will during the next disaster, because there will be another disaster coming? The Jamaican people deserve answers, not excuses. Madam Speaker, real economic transformation requires more than slogans and promotional campaigns. It requires a coherent national architecture. The government must lead in creating the framework within which private investment can thrive. That architecture must connect parish-level productive corridors so that national industrial zone and international logistic networks. It must align trade policy with industrial policy. It must deliver affordable energy, modern infrastructure, reliable transportation systems, and digital connectivity. It must also ensure that skills development aligns with the industries we claim we want to build. That is what a serious growth strategy looks like, and that is precisely what remains absent from this budget. Madam Speaker, 1 year ago, I stood in this honorable House and outlined a framework we call Jamaica 4.0. It was not a speech crafted for headlines or political theater. It was intended as a roadmap for growth, competitiveness, and national transformation. Today, I do not rise simply to repeat that vision. I rise to ask whether Jamaica has moved any closer to building it. On this side of the House, we believe Jamaica's next phase of development must focus on practical, achievable initiatives that deliver visible benefits while laying the foundation for long-term transformation. Central to that vision is unlocking the productive power of Jamaica's MSMEs. Small and medium-sized businesses cannot continue operating at the margins of the economy while carrying so much of the burden for employment and innovation. Madam Speaker, in successful economies, MSME growth is supported by integrated ecosystems in which financing, logistics, digital platforms, technical support, and market access work together cohesively. That is why we support the creation of a national MSME growth and export program capable of delivering low-interest production-linked financing, shared manufacturing and agro-processing facilities, and embedded support for packaging, standard certification, digital commerce, and export readiness. But beyond that, Madam Speaker, we must repurpose national infrastructure to support entrepreneurship and production. One powerful example is the transformation of the Postal Corporation of Jamaica into a national MSME incubator and e-commerce platform. Our post offices should no longer exist merely as traditional mail facilities. They can become digital business hubs, export gateways, fulfillment centers, and logistical support systems serving entrepreneurs in every parish across Jamaica. In partnership with the private sector, this could significantly reduce one of the greatest barriers facing small businesses, the lack of affordable access to logistics, payment systems, technology, and market connectivity. At the same time, the Jamaica Business Development Corporation must evolve beyond administration and become a true market maker capable of securing international retail partnerships, expanding Things Jamaican shelf space globally, and helping local businesses access blended financing opportunities. Real prosperity will not come from a handful of large firms alone. It will come from empowering thousands of Jamaicans to produce, innovate, scale, and export. Madam Speaker, Jamaica's geographic advantage is real, but geography alone is not enough. We must move decisively to develop logistics parks linked to ports, highways, airports, and zones. And that can attract manufacturing. Special economic zones must become engines of broad-based growth rather than isolated enclaves disconnected from surrounding communities. Every logistic investment must create opportunities for Jamaican suppliers, truckers, technicians, contractors, and workers. We must also modernize how logistics governance itself operates. The Port Community System, the PCS, established under the Logistic Hub framework, must become more than a data sandbox. It must function as a coordinating mechanism, bringing together customs, shipping lines, freight forwarders, truckers, warehouses, terminal operators, and regulators. I call it a logistics council, into a unified and accountable system. Jamaica cannot continue treating annual Christmas port congestion as though it were an unavoidable surprise. Efficient logistics systems are built through coordination, planning, accountability, and data discipline. Madam Speaker, none of this transformation will succeed without workforce readiness and human capital development. I recently attended the opening of several new facilities at Edith Dalton James High School, the only high school in my constituency. What stood out to me was not simply the physical expansion, but the vision demonstrated by the school's leadership. Their programs in logistics and supply chain management, music and entertainment, and barbering reflected an important understanding that education must prepare students for the real economic participation. This is the direction Jamaica must move in. We must train for the industries we intend to build, not simply the industries we inherited from the past. Education, vocational training, and workforce development must align with logistics, advanced manufacturing, digital services, cybersecurity, entertainment, and technology. Productivity, Madam Speaker, begins not in boardrooms, but in classrooms. Finally, Madam Speaker, Growth must not bypass communities. It must uplift them. This is why we support a community enterprise link program, ensuring that major industrial and logistics developments create opportunities for surrounding communities through local sourcing, supplier development, access to procurement, mentorship, and community investment. Growth must not remain concentrated among the few. It must be inclusive. It must create pathways into ownership, entrepreneurship, and upward mobility for ordinary Jamaicans across every parish of this country. Madam Speaker, Jamaica's founders did not build this nation so future generations could merely manage decline with administrative competence. They built this country so Jamaicans could prosper within it. They built it so that the nurse trained at the University of the West Indies could build a future here, so that the engineer dreaming of modernizing Jamaica's infrastructure could do so at home instead of abroad, so that young Jamaicans could believe their ambitions were achievable within their own country. The generation now in its 20s and 30s will make a defining decision within the next decade, whether Jamaica offers a future worth investing in, and they will make that decision based not on speeches or slogans, but on evidence. They will judge this country based on whether the economy rewards productivity, innovation, education, entrepreneurship, and hard work. 10 years of fiscal discipline have not produced the level of structural transformation Jamaica requires. The economy is not growing at the rate a nation with Jamaica's assets and strategic advantages should be growing. Yeah. I'm wrapping up now. The middle class is increasingly squeezed. Young professionals are increasingly uncertain. 70% of our tertiary educated citizens now live abroad. That is not simply migration, it is a national emergency. The Jamaican people, I'm concluding, the Jamaican people are not asking for recklessness. They're asking for vision proportionate to their potential. They want industries capable of creating opportunity. They want infrastructure supporting development. They want housing they can afford. They want wages capable of sustaining half a page. They want wages capable of sustaining families. They want a government capable of looking at the transformation taking place across the global economy and saying clearly, this is Jamaica's strategy. This is our timeline, and this is our plan for capturing the opportunities emerging before us. Madam Speaker, recovery is necessary. Stability is important. But stability without transformation cannot become the ceiling of our ambition. This side of the House has presented a framework for growth. We have identified the contradictions, we have demanded accountability, and remain ready to help build a Jamaica where prosperity is not the privilege of a few, but the shared reality of the many. So the central question before this House remains the same as when I started. Not surprisingly, whether the budget balances, not simply whether the budget balances, but whether the economy grows, whether industry expands, but whether trade diversifies, whether logistics transform, whether the middle class survives, and whether young Jamaicans still believe their future belongs here. Where is the prosperity, resilience, and growth strategy? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
House Leader.
We thank the member for his contribution, which at times appears well-intentioned, even though sometimes he went a little too far. But at times it appeared well-intentioned. We thank the member from St. Andrew Western. Madam Speaker, since we are in public business, and there was a very short bill that was tabled last week that, based on my interactions thus far, it doesn't appear that there are any challenges with it. I would move to take the Conch Export Levy Amendment Act. So let me first move for the suspension of the sectorial debates, just to indicate that the sectorial debates continue tomorrow, where we will hear from the member from Manchester Northwestern and the member from St. James Southern, and also the Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining. Madam Speaker, since that minister has 3 portfolios, well, you know that is going to come. So I move for the suspension of the sectoral debates until tomorrow.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader, you will be taking Conch.
Madam Speaker, the bill, the Conch Export Levy Amendment Act 2026, has as its genesis trying to treat with a challenge which arose when there was the time that the industry went through a lot of difficulty, and persons in the industry would have reached out to the minister to make some adjustments to the methodology in which the Conch levy is paid. As it is now, the requirement by law is that before you ship, which literally means before you collect, you are called upon to pay. And as you can understand, especially with what we have been seeing with the industry over the last few years and with the weather-related events, that has posed some challenges. There was a time that the minister tried to intervene, and upon the advice of the Attorney General, recognized that the power was not so granted under law. And as such, we would have gone to Cabinet, and Cabinet made a decision that the bill will be amended to empower the minister by order, subject to affirmative resolution of this House, to prescribe the period during which an exporter may pay the levy on Conch, and extend that period and the manner in which the levy on Conch shall be paid, whether in full or in installments, to empower the minister to waive, reduce, or remit the levy on Conch under specified circumstances, and to amend the constitution of the Board of Management of the Fund established under Section 10 of the Act. Among the amendments reflected in the bill is the fact that the minister will have the discretion to make an order, again subject to affirmative resolution of this House, to extend the specified period for the payment of the levy on Conch payable by the exporter up to a maximum period of 12 months following the granting of an export health certificate and export license for consignment of Conch. So in other words, Madam Speaker, the minister is still constrained that any sort of extension cannot go beyond 12 months. The rationale for this amendment is that in the event of a disruption in the fishing season, for instance, severe weather conditions, or other external trade factors, this enlarged period would provide adequate time for an exporter of Conch to make the relevant payment of the levy to the Veterinary Services Division. In this regard, the minister will also have the discretion to stipulate whether the levy is to be paid in full or by installments, again, upon affirmative resolution of this House. Further, the minister will also have a discretion to waive, reduce, or remit the levy payable upon the application for an export health certificate and export license where he is satisfied that such waiver, reduction, or remission is justifiable based upon the recommendations from the National Fisheries Authority and the Board of the Fisheries Management and Development Fund after an evaluation of the conditions relating to trade, economic viability, and sustainability of the fisheries sector. It is to be noted that with the amendment to the composition of the board, it is expected to eliminate any possible or perceived conflict of interest. Just to go clause by clause, the bill commences with clause 1, short title and construction. This clause provides the short title of the bill and stipulates that the bill is to be read and construed as one with the principal act, the Conch Export Levy Act, amendment of Section 2 of the Principal Act is contained in Clause 2, which intends to amend Section 2 of the Principal Act by inserting the terms exporter, National Fisheries Advisory Council, and National Fisheries Authority, and providing the respective definitions thereof. Clause 3, repeal and replacement of Section 3 of the Principal Act. This clause intends to repeal Section 3 of the Principal Act, which deals with levy on conch export, and replace same with a new Section 3, which stipulates that 3.1 an exporter shall pay a levy on conch exported during a conch season, notwithstanding anything in any other law or enactment or in any agreement to the contrary. 2, on each occasion that the exporter is issued an export health certificate and export license for consignment of conch, the exporter shall pay the levy A, to the Veterinary Services Division, B, at the prescribed rate, C, in the prescribed manner, and D, within the prescribed period. 3, by order subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives, the Minister shall prescribe A, the rate at which and manner in which the exporter shall pay the levy, and B, in accordance with subsection 6, the period within which the exporter shall pay the levy, the specified period for payment. 4, the order shall specify A, the conch season to which the order applies, and B, whether the exporter shall pay the levy in full or may pay the levy in installments, and any maximum number of such installments. 5, by order subject to affirmative resolution in the House of Representatives, the Minister may extend the specified period for payment in accordance with subsection 6. And 6, the specified period for payment shall A, commence on the date of issue of the export health certificate and the export license for the relevant consignment of conch, and not exceed 12 months inclusive of any extensions. Clause 4 deals with amendment to the Principal Act by the insertion of Clause 3A, which intends to amend the Principal Act by inserting next after Section 3, Section 3A with the marginal note, waiver, etc. of levy on conch export, which provides that 3A1, upon receipt of an application for an export health certificate and export license, the Minister may, subject to subsection 2, waive, reduce, or remit the levy, notwithstanding the requirement to pay a levy under Section 3. 2, the Minister may waive, reduce, or remit the levy if the Minister is satisfied that the National Fisheries Authority and the Board have both recommended the waiver, reduction, or remission of the levy after evaluation of the conditions related to trade, economic viability, and sustainability of the fisheries sector, and B, the waiver, reduction, or remission of the levy is in the public interest. 3, where the Minister waives, reduces, or remits the levy, the Minister shall notify the applicant in writing of the decision to do so and the reason for that decision. Clause 5, the amendment of the schedule of the Principal Act. This clause intends to amend the schedule of the Principal Act by repealing paragraph 1 thereof, which deals with the constitution of the Board, and replacing same with the following. The Board shall comprise 9 members, being 6 ex officio members as specified in some paragraph 2, and B, subject to some paragraph 3, 2 representatives of the fisheries industry and 1 representative of the Jamaica Fishermen Cooperative Union Limited. The ex officio members shall be the Chief Technical Director in the Ministry responsible for fisheries, a senior fisheries officer in the National Fisheries Authority nominated by the Chief Executive Officer of the National Fisheries Authority, a senior veterinary officer in the Veterinary Services Division nominated by the Director of Veterinary Services, an attorney at law in the Ministry responsible for fisheries, senior officer in the Finance and Accounts Division of the Ministry responsible for fisheries, and the chairman of the National Fisheries Advisory Council. Each member referred in subparagraph 1B shall be nominated by the Minister and approved by Cabinet. And then there's a memorandum of objects reasons for the bill. Just to indicate, we had gone through an extensive discussion in relation to conch when we brought the order. And I think one of the points the member raised, that's a member from Eastern Westmoreland, when he spoke about the amount of the levy, is whether we would have the authority to do away with the levy in light of the circumstances. I had indicated at that time we would not have it, but we are taking steps. These are the steps that we now take. I commend the bill to the House.
Member from Eastern Westmoreland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We did have a discussion when we look at the order in March. And as the minister said, some of the amendments here are in line with the points that I was making then. That with Jamaica receiving MSc certification for CONC, and for the members, MSc here is not Masters of Science. It's Marine Stewardship Council. Having received that certification, which I think is the first in the world, that we needed to look at how we can deal with these members especially when they would have suffered from some disaster. And so I am supporting the proposed amendments that will ensure that the government of the day and the minister is able to respond to those challenges, and you're able to waive, if necessary, the fees, and especially to look at the levy, because as I had pointed out then, that with 50 cents per pound, US cents per pound, that if you gave somebody a quota of 100,000 pounds, that they would have to find 50,000 US upfront. And I thought that that was a little bit onerous, and that the amendment to ensure that those persons can make the payment in part or make it after they have gotten sale for their produce is commonsensical, and therefore has my full support. May it please you, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
House Leader.
I thank the member, and as such, I close the debate and ask that we go to committee stages to consider the bill. I ask for the second reading of the bill.
Question is that the bill be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Conch Export Levy Act read a second time.
We have space. Can come down. I have space.
Madam Speaker, we can put...
I came down too early. Hmm?
Yeah, man, just say.
The House will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause.
Madam Speaker, if you are minded, we could put clause, but let's put clause 1. Can put clause 1 through to 5, no changes.
I put clauses 1 through 5. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
Can put the memorandum. Oh, we don't need to put the memorandum.
I put the title and enacting clause. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendment. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendments. Minister?
Madam Speaker, I ask that the bill be read a third time.
The question is that the bill be read a third time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Conch Export Levy Act read a third time and passed.
Madam Speaker, I now ask for the recommittal of all the agenda items leading up to public business.
Statement by ministers. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Statement by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House are the following. Annual report of the Financial Services Commission for the financial year 2022-2023 and its related ministry paper numbered 30 of 2026 titled Annual Report of the Financial Services Commission for the year ended March 31, 2023. Annual report and audited financial statement of the Electoral Commission of Jamaica for the financial year 2024-2025. Auditor General's Department, Hurricane Melissa Relief Initiative Audit Compliance Report, Financial Management of Donated and National Disaster Funds, and the implementation of the Roof Restoration Project. And finally, the retabling of the Auditor General's Department's Performance Audit Report, Management of the Production Incentive Program by RADA. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Bills brought from the Senate. Clerk.
The following is a message from the President of the Senate to the Honorable House of Representatives. I have the honor to advise the Honorable House of Representatives that on the 8th day of May 2026, a bill entitled An Act to Make Provision for the Management and Implementation of the Post-Disaster Reconstruction and Resilience Efforts consequent on the passage of Hurricane Melissa and for resilience generally to establish the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority and for connected matters was passed in the Senate without amendment. Honorable Thomas Tavares Finson, President of the Senate.
Petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the National Housing Trust Amendment Special Provisions Act 2026. I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take first reading of the bill.
Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to the sitting of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the first reading of a bill shortly entitled the National Housing Trust Amendment Special Provisions Act 2026.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I now move that a bill shortly entitled the National Housing Trust Amendment Special Provisions Act 2026 be read a first time.
Thank you. Clerk?
A bill shortly entitled the National Housing Trust Amendment Special Provisions Act 2026 be read a first time.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice of second reading of the bill.
House Leader.
Madam Speaker, it is not intended to do any further business today, so I ask that the House be adjourned until tomorrow.
Members, I will announce it on adjournment as said by the Minister of Health. He says that there are some goodies in the room, including $1 million per member of parliament to be picked up. Do not rush. To be used for health purposes in your respective constituencies. He didn't say. So, as indicated by the House Leader, there will be no other business for today. We adjourn until tomorrow at 2 p.m. sharp. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. This Honorable House now stands adjourned.